They say when there's life, there's hope. But who are they? Do they know what they're saying? Is there really hope? I don't even know where I can find it. There are so many bad events in the world. Problems are here and there. Just problems, no solutions. Oh, how I miss the kind of life I had before. Just staring at a blank space, thinking, no happiness, confused, wanting to give up, suffering, wanting to quit. Sacrifice is what my heart is screaming. Rain is falling, as my tears also fall. Why did it have to happen? Why now of all seasons? I am in despair. I resent responding again and again. But then one day, as I awake, I found myself surprised, for I've come a long way. I then ask myself, how? How did I not notice that in the first place, you were there carrying me? How can it be that you can answer all my questions? How is it possible that in the midst of all the chaos, you are my peace? They say when there's life, there's hope. I think they're right. Because you are life yourself. You are hope yourself. Live Life is a pillar of the Live Christ, Share Christ mission. We advocate the beauty of faith, family, and life. We proclaim the truth and goodness of life. Life is precious. Life is a gift. Life can be lived to the full. In Christ, anything is possible. In Christ, we will live life.
Life is a gift. It is the greatest gift given to us. It is the breath of God in us. It is that which makes us alive. And this very gift is under attack. Life is attacked on all fronts: divorce, unnatural end of life, abortion, total population control, and homosexual and irregular unions. As Catholics, we cannot stay on the sidelines. We cannot be spectators to the ongoing war against faith, family, and life. We have to be involved, and we have to be equipped. In this next set of workshops, let us study and unmask the evils that try to harm the goodness of life, and courageously respond to the work of upholding and defending life.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this breakout session in this symposium, which pertains to promoting a pro-life media culture. I'd like to thank the organizers of VIBRANCE Life in Full for inviting me to be one of the speakers in this very important symposium. My presentation today will cover 5 parts. The first part will be an overview of the current media culture in our country, and in this particular part, I would also like to emphasize why media is very important in the pro-life movement in our efforts to promote more adherence to pro-life ideals in our media setting. The next part will be the ideals that we want to set for ourselves. What kind of media environment should pervade for pro-life ideals to flourish? What kind of media professionals should we encourage, should we produce in order that the pro-life culture in the media environment will also succeed? The third part will be a statement of the goals that we would like to achieve. And then the fourth part would be my sharing of just a few strategies that you might like to consider in furthering the spread of pro-life ideals in our country, of course, through the use of media. And then the fifth would be a wrap-up or a conclusion that will cap everything that I shared with you. Shall we begin? The experiences that I will share with you today will mostly be about my expertise, which is broadcast communication. I took up that course at the UP College of Mass Communications, and that has been the path of my career. I went into television news and public affairs for many years. Prior to that, I was also a radio announcer in another radio station before moving to television. And that is where I spent a good 3 decades of my career until I semi-retired a few years ago. But now I'm working in the Catholic radio station, Radio Veritas, ang radyo ng simbahan. I have a daily program which I will mention to you at the end of the program. Okay, so why is media important? In every public relations effort, in any advocacy campaign, the role of media is very important. Yes, we do have our own efforts. We can put up posters, we can hold symposia, we can hold conferences, we can have one-on-one sessions, we can do a campus tour. But when we employ media, our efforts are magnified, our efforts are multiplied because of the technology. For example, broadcasting, the term itself, broadcast, means that you cast broadly the message. That, by the way, is an agricultural term. A farmer spreads the seeds, casts out the seeds during the planting season. So very important is the role of media, be it broadcasting or print, newspapers, magazines, etc. And now, in the advent of social communications, in the advent of digital and online media, the success that an organization will have in employing the media is far greater, especially if it's handled well, especially if it's creatively conceived, conceptualized, and also if the people who are behind it are adept at it. All right? So there should not be any doubt that media can be an ally in what you and I are doing in spreading a pro-life culture in our country, in the world. Okay? But it's important also to find associates, affiliates, allies within the media organizations. And there are perhaps not many, but there are some. There are, in fact, people who can potentially be your champions, and it's up to you to discover who they are. And that I will delve more into when we go to the strategies. Let's talk about the kind of media culture that exists in our country today. You know what? Since radio and television began in the Philippines, there has not been a very dramatic change in the, for example, the orientation of radio and television outfits. It has always been commercially oriented. Radio and TV stations are put up for business. They are business enterprises. The owners put them up for income, for profit. There's intrinsically nothing wrong with that because they have to run the business as well. They have to have a good business model, a corporate setup, because they have to pay their employees, they have to pay the bills, electricity, and so on. They have to pay their talents, and they have to consistently upgrade their equipment. And those things cost money, okay? But the problem begins, I think, when they don't just profit, but they profiteer. That means that they do not concern themselves anymore with the good that they do for their audiences, for the community, for the consumers of the media products that they produce. They are more concerned about earning a lot, earning more than they actually should. So there should always be a balance between sales orientation and profit or commercial orientation. Sadly, majority of radio and TV stations today are really there for the business. That's why TV Maria, Radio Veritas, and all other faith-based stations are a minority. There's really nothing wrong with that. And I'd like to emphasize that because we live in a democracy and business, including media business, are or is market driven. Okay? But I have to qualify that as far as media organizations are concerned, it's very important that we are concerned about the people that we supposedly serve. They listen to us, they watch us. We have to do something good for them in return for their patronage. And we have to remember that media offers information. Media offers knowledge. And if we can make that information, that knowledge important for people, useful for people, it can be a sort of information that will uplift them, inspire them to be better than they are, then I think media is doing its part. Okay? So let there be no doubt, therefore, how important media is and how important relating to the media is. We have to find good media partners so that the pro-life movement will continue to spread and succeed. What other characteristics does the current media landscape have? Well, they love controversy and sensationalism. You can find that in news programs, you can find that even in the entertainment side of the media. They like to shock you, they like to, of course, leave an impact on you. And speaking of entertainment, wow, we have a lot of that. In fact, if you weigh the content of media today, entertainment really weighs the heaviest. Why? Because entertainment sells the best. They are the most popular programs. You hear their favorite comedians and hosts and singers and actors, and therefore the media networks know that for sure, and they capitalize on that. Again, nothing wrong with that, but we have to balance what we are giving our audiences in terms of what they want, but we should also balance it with what we as experts, as professionals in the business, feel that they need. And also, surveys and research will draw that out. We will know the pulse of our audiences if we do communications research, audience research. Okay, so what other characteristics may I share with you? The recent controversy regarding the withholding of the franchise renewal from the media giant ABS-CBN, of course, it's very explosive development in the country, and I think the root of it is that there is, in principle, something questionable about the regulation control mechanism in the government today. This has always been the case, where Congress grants franchises to radio and television stations. After a certain time, they will have to apply for a renewal. If it is renewed, then they will continue to operate. And I suppose there are guidelines by which radio and stations should abide. They have to be operating very well, and they have to be conscious of their responsibilities. And you might want to check our Philippine Constitution, because this particular principle is enshrined in our Constitution, that the national patrimony or natural wealth of our country, including the airwaves, including the himpapawid, as we call it in Filipino, is owned by each and every Filipino. And the government, and in this case Congress, is vested the authority to choose which radio or TV stations, which media outfits are deserving to be given the right to operate. Okay? There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's good that our leaders are taking charge. But you know where the problem begins? The problem begins when there is a collusion, a connivance between politicians and media owners and media managers. To be able to get a franchise easily, media managers can warm up to the politicians, can do certain favors for them, and then there will exist an unholy alliance between the two. Representatives in Congress will now try to be at the good graces of media owners and media managers by giving them a franchise. This will eventually be very useful for them, especially when they are after re-election, when they have political ambitions, when they have plans of maybe gunning or aspiring for higher positions later on in government. You see where that problem can arise. So I don't want to delve into the ABS-CBN issue. That can be a topic for another discussion. But it is just unfortunate that because we borrowed this kind of system from the American model, we did not look at other possible models that will probably give us a better one, a more effective one that will be useful for our people and for our country. You have the Japanese model, you have the British model, and these two models had room for a public service broadcasting system, a public broadcasting mechanism that is not commercial, it's independent, and it really provides many culturally uplifting programs. Okay, you can check that out if you are interested in that sort of subject. Okay, and the other thing I'd like to mention, also in connection with the heavy sales orientation, is that even in other platforms, for example, cable, and now in social media platforms, we are peppered with commercials. And this really surprises me. For example, the idea of cable, when it was invented, was to provide people who are unable to receive the free broadcast signals because of mountains, because of physical obstructions. And so they introduced the idea of cable. And for people to receive the broadcast signals via cable, they will have to pay a subscription fee. And it should be commercial free because the cable companies already get income from the subscription of people who are subscribing to their service, right? But don't you notice that cable networks now have so many commercials? They're not any different anymore from the terrestrial broadcast service. And this is really a big question for me. Are they beginning to profiteer the way media networks did and do? Are they getting into that commercial orientation too much? I certainly hope not. And even in social media platforms, there are newer and newer ways of commercials to come in, of advertising to come in. You know, I am not completely against advertising. I appreciate the value of advertising. One of my children is a practitioner of advertising, and advertising can do a lot of good. There are many creative and excellent people in the advertising world. But what I'd like to happen is that these will be maybe regulated to a certain extent so that they will not get in the way of the content that is being presented. Okay? Well, there will be one good area for creative minds to think about, right? Find a way that commercials, advertisements will not distract, but will actually maybe enhance the act of viewing, the act of listening. All right, so now let's get into the heart of our discussion. After giving you that media culture briefing, I'd like now to proceed to how to really promote pro-life culture in the media. What kind of culture are we talking about? When we speak about culture, we cannot help but talk about the companies themselves, the outfits, the establishments, the media organizations. We are hoping that these media organizations will have owners and managers who will live by example, who have virtues and values that are solid, that are morally upright, aside from being experts at what they do, running the business, and being professionals at the skills that they are supposed to do in their jobs. We also want and hope that media organizations will be open to presenting the variety of pro-life issues that are necessary for audiences to understand these matters. They may be radio programs, TV programs, articles, features, news stories, even games. Why not, right? Online gaming is very popular among the young. Perhaps it can also be a vehicle for pro-life ideals. Again, why not? No, we would like to really tickle the imagination of creative people. What we want are programs, products that will promote the pro-life culture and raise the dignity of human being, the unborn, the elderly, people who are sick, women who are marginalized, etc. And then, finally, a company that has respect and concern for their listeners, for their viewers, for the consumers who patronize their products, for the audience, because that sets them apart from any other kind of business. that means they're really concerned about the good that they do for their community. So in short, we are dreaming of media organizations that will help us in our effort to convert hearts and minds closer to God, closer to the faith. And then, let me also tell you about the characteristics of a pro-life media professional. Like I said, there are many out there. Perhaps we just don't know who they are, or perhaps they are there, but they have not made known their sentiments. But let's profile the pro-life media person. This person is, as I said, as I described the managers and owners, should be morally upright. The pro-life ideals are really hinged on morality, on morals. And then this person should also live his faith, whatever it may be. This year, we celebrate with the CBCP the Year of Ecumenism and Indigenous Peoples. So while most of us perhaps in this conference, online conference, most of us might be Christians and Catholics, we should also be welcome to other faiths. The Torah of the Jews and even the Quran of the Muslims have many, many good virtues that also promote life and the culture of life. So whoever that person may be, whatever his faith may be, he or she can be an ally. He can be a pro-life media professional as well. Let me also emphasize that this person has to be competent at what he does. This person should look at his work as a path to holiness. This person should be hardworking and persevering, and this person should continue to improve his own skill set because he is a serious professional who derives his livelihood as well as his fulfillment from his work. And then finally, I'd like to emphasize the following characteristics: creativity, innovativeness, resourcefulness, effectiveness. Those are very important for a media professional. In short, maybe you might say it's a tall order, but we would like media professionals out there to be good followers of their faith. For us, good Christians, good Catholics, good citizens of the country, law-abiding, they vote, they pay their taxes, they're good neighbors, and they have to be good, and if I may add, excellent communicators. All right, my favorite saint, Saint Josemaria, the founder of Opus Dei, would always say that if we want to push the apostolate, if we want to spread the good news of our Lord, we have to have two minds. We have to have the lay mentality. We have to love the world. We have to be immersed in it, in various professions. We have to love people and be in fellowship with them, all types of them. And then, aside from a lay mentality, we should also have a priestly outlook, the kind of outlook that will drive us to be better and better, greater and greater, holier and holier, closer and closer to our Lord. All right? So now, let me give you the goals that we want to achieve. This will be very brief because these are just a sort of capitulation of the ideals that I talked about previously. What do we want to happen? We want to convince and influence people, decision makers, content producers, performers, people out there who are influential in the media industry, that they have to help us in pushing for the pro-life ideals, in promoting these pro-life ideals for their own good, for the good of the company, for the good of the community. Number two, We have to present programs and subjects that evoke, portray pro-life ideals, pro-marriage, pro-children, pro-family, and so on and so forth, pro-unity of life, pro-God. So when we convince the people behind the stations, behind the media establishments, that the pro-life movement is worthy of their support, we will then be able to convince them to collaborate with us to produce and create these programs. And then the third goal is for us to cultivate and develop pro-life audiences. What good would it do if we have already allied with people, we are already creating good programs that will open their hearts and minds about the culture of life, and yet they are not media literate, and yet they are not ready to receive this information, this knowledge. So development of the audience is a very important component of the whole activity that I am discussing with you. Here, we have to imagine that when we speak of audiences, we refer to media consumers, the listeners, the viewers, the netizens, those who hook up those to social media platforms, those who are on Facebook, those who are on Twitter, those who are on Instagram, etc. Now let's talk about the strategies. And here I would like to propose immediate as well as short-term strategies of how to achieve the pro-life media culture and how to get pro-life media champions. The immediate ones are the following. First, let us identify champions, spokespersons, influencers, animators, advocates, opinion leaders in our midst. They can be members of our parishes. They can be our next door neighbors. They can be our friends. They can be part of the same diocese as we are. But let me not limit myself. Some of them might not even be in the Catholic faith, but they are doing significant work, important work in this area. Let us ally with them. Let us connect with them. And then another immediate strategy would be the individual and personal strategy, which means that we befriend as many people in the media as possible. Let us find out what their needs are. Some time ago, when I was with the University of Asia and the Pacific, I was handling the corporate communications office, and we came up with the project of reaching out to the media. This was, I think, in collaboration with the Catholic Media Network of Father Francis Lucas. And so we worked with them. I also remember that Radio Veritas was part of it, I think, because I remember that Father Anton Pascual, our president in Veritas, was also part of the program. What we did was gather as many media professionals as possible, and we discussed just simple matters of the faith with them. And we also tried to inquire how life is as media professionals. And some of them told us that they actually need forms of piety, forms of means of formation, because they want to get to know more of their faith. And so that can be a cue to some of you who are into this. One perfect opportunity would be to come up with maybe a Lenten retreat or an Advent retreat specifically for media. Okay, so there will be 4 eyes here in this particular suggestion of mine for an immediate strategy. Let us move towards their intellectual development. offer them seminars or symposia like this that would be along their area of interest. In other words, let's introduce the importance of study, continuous study. Aside from intellectual development, let's also delve into their interior life. Perhaps some of them are too busy because the business of media is very competitive. Let us insert in their lives love for prayer, and let's bring them closer to sacraments, because that will make them better practitioners if they become better Christians, better in whatever faith they have. No? Of course, in the end, we know in our hearts that we want to draw them to the church, the bearer of the truth of our Lord Jesus Christ. But that cannot be done drastically, as you and I know. So let's bring them closer to prayer life, interior life. Next, we want them to be immersed in the practice, but not just in their own media practice. Let us help them maybe doing outreach, doing extension work. Let's bring them to field trip. Why not? No, plan something specifically that will interest media. In other words, let's immerse them in community. And then finally, interaction. It's also important that media people will have fellowship with people like us, like-minded individuals who have the same principles and who can work together to do certain projects and certain endeavors. So those are my immediate strategies. There are short to mid-term, perhaps even to long-term strategies that you can think of. But I'd like to propose one which is very close to my heart. You know, I was a teacher for many years, and I was, and I still am, affiliated with organizations of communication, teachers, and specialists. And this strategy of mine is institutional or communal, which means that we have to deal with certain institutions that can forge this kind of development. What I am referring to is a sort of investment in young people. Let us invest in the education of young people who are into mass communication, journalism, into maybe theater, film and audiovisual, the like. We can approach people who are in the academic world, in academia, and perhaps we can develop and propose a mass communication media curriculum that will give importance to the faith-based media, faith-based communication as a discipline or as a field of study. It could be a minor program within a bigger major program, maybe broadcasting or communication research perhaps, but it could be a minor in faith-based media and so on. Maybe it can be a different, maybe more appropriate terminology. It's also possible to offer electives on the following courses: History of Christian/Catholic Media, covering religions. This would be good for journalists. What is the best and the most effective way to approach the gathering of news, the production and presentation of news about religions, Judaism, Islam, and of course Christianity, Catholicism. Okay, so another important elective course would be faith-based programming and management. How is it to organize a Catholic or a Christian radio or television station? How do you raise funds? How do you sell advertising? Because it will require a more unique strategy, quite different from the way the secular world does. And then media literacy, very, very important. How to discern between good and bad programs. Bad because they're not good for our souls. No? How do we teach children to appreciate good programs? to discern what is good and bad material, to watch, to see, to listen over the internet, the books that they read, the music that they hear, the movies that they watch. So media literacy is very, very important. So those are the strategies, and I know I am perhaps going over time, and I'd like to close this by saying that media is a gift. Media is part of creation. The Lord allowed this to develop for a purpose. And we have the technology in place, we have media companies thriving, we have media professionals out there, and the work is cut out for us. Let us reach out to them, let us connect with them and work with them, collaborate with them. You know, if you go back to the history of the first Christians, they're always starting something. They're always pioneering in something. And I've heard that if you go back to the history of hospitals and orphanages, you will come across historical accounts that Christians began these institutions. Not to mention that universities were began by Christians. Beautiful works of art were inspired by the Christian faith. And so is media. There's a little story that I'd like to share with you as I close, just to prove to you that radio is a gift. It's a gift from God. When radio was still in its experimental stage in the 1920s in the US, the US Navy decided to develop certain experiments that will prove that the transmission of voice and sound is possible within distances. So what they did was have a sort of receiving station on the shore, and then there was a boat or a ship out there at sea with a transmitting station. And so they had these experiments, and first there was a voice transmission, and it was successful. And then they tried playing music, and again, from the transmitting station to the makeshift receiving station here on land, it was successful. And you know what day that was? It was Christmas Eve, December 24th of that year, sometime in the 1920s. And you know what music was heard? "O Holy Night," one of our beloved Christian songs for Christmas. And you know what voice was transmitted? It was a voice reciting the Gospel of St. Luke. So with that, my dear friends, I'd like to thank you for the time that you gave me to share these thoughts, these ideas with you. I'd like to wish you all the best, and rest assured that I will be praying for all of you. Thank you very much, and God bless us all.